just laying it all out there. And so that was what I was like, the verses we have to write about. I don't want to, it can't be like this, sugar coated, like we're going to sing it on a Sunday morning. I don't care about that. I just need it to be honest. And I don't care if anybody else hears it, but I'm writing this song for my wife. And so we wrote that song. It felt so special to that moment. And I honestly left that moment thinking, I went there to write this song for my wife and for my friend who was there that day. And that's probably it. Because I knew that later on, I knew I was doing a live album, and it was going to be, a live album that was full of worship songs for the church. And I didn't know that this really fit that mold.
Josh, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to meet you. We've been chopping it up for the last 10 minutes or so, and I said, we got to hit record, but man, I'm so glad to meet you. We probably just missed each other in the last 24 hours, too.
I know. It sounds like it. We could have done this in person. You could have just been sitting right here in my little studio office. But, so
Next
good to meet you.
For sure. Yeah, Franklin, Tennessee is one of my favorite places on the planet, and it was good to be back. It was a good weekend, so... Yeah,
we love it here.
I'm glad. You guys have been there, what, 3? You said 3 years?
3. It's coming. Yeah, it's like 3.5 years. We moved here. I'm from North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then we moved here 3.5 years from Redding, California. We were out there for almost 6 years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Off the wall question as we start. I like routine, stability, predictability. How do you all do with change? Is that something that you're cool with? A cross-country move's a big deal, and I just think a lot of people are experiencing a lot of change right now, and I'd just love to hear your take on navigating change, whether expected or unexpected.
That's a great question. I mean, it's funny because I feel like I'm a guy of routine, and I feel like I'm... change is probably like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I had everything. I like comfort. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. I'm very I want to be comfy and just, I like predict things that are predictable. And my wife is she's the one that loves, which, I say that she also does love routine. But she's the one up for an adventure more than me in a lot of ways. Meaning life. Let's get the kids and let's just go. But it's funny because I say all that, but then there is something about the adventure of a massive change that I feel like I crave every now and then. And yeah, and I don't know. I wouldn't have said that about myself before, 8 years ago, maybe. And but then we did move. We were in Charlotte, and our kids were 2 and 3, and that was when we moved. And I'm from North Carolina. All my family are still there. My wife's from Pennsylvania. All of her family's there, and we moved all the way across the country to be out in Redding, California, and with Bethel Music and Bethel Church, and it was a massive thing. And in the midst of that too, I think. Because it was a great transition, it went well. The people we were leaving, our family and everything were behind us, and it was a great exit out of there. And then going to a community that we were already part of, that was amazing. And so I think even doing that, it helped me realize too, how much I kind of loved that adventure. And then when it was time to we felt like the Lord was moving us here to Franklin, to Nashville area, it didn't. I got excited about it. Because I was like, oh, I remember the last time we felt that we heard the Lord and we felt like we were doing a big shift. I remember the fruit that came out of that, the joy, the growth that came out of that for us and for our family. And so it got me pumped about this. But that said, I'm not naturally my day to day is, I like it to be pretty consistent.
For sure. Yeah, what's your take on leaving and grieving seasons of life then? I mean, not to wax totally philosophical, but I think about that because there are leaving and grieving seasons throughout life.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I'm learning how to do that better. But what's your take on seasons close? How do you bring closure to seasons in your heart, to grieve those well, to move forward to what the Lord's called you to do?
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And I think especially, because I've grown up in church and I've been a worship leader and worship pastor off and on for years. And so I kind of, when you say that, a lot of that with me, like that, involves like leaving, not just like your, like physical, like your town, or your city, or your home, but like also like leaving like a work or, job, and leaving the church. And so many times that's not done well, like at all. And, I think for me, and I remember I had my pastor in Charlotte talked to me about this too. And when I talked to him about moving to California, he was like, I think he's like, I just wanted to let you know you're doing this well. And he said, and a lot of it has to do with like, I don't feel like you're leaving something. I feel like you're going to the next thing. And he's like, and it was so great. He was like, so we're going to send you out well. We want this to be well. And so I remember I held on to that, and I've always like, okay, I want to, it is that tension of like, I'm sad about leaving this thing, or I'm grieving it, but also like, why am I leaving? Like, do I have a place to go to the next? It's the next thing right in front of me. And I'm actually really pumped about what's next. And I want to do both well. And there is that tension of the grieving process of what the Lord's done, what's gone on in your life previously. But then like, okay, I'm very excited about growth and what's next. And I feel like we've done that well as a family. I think we have great relationships with everything, with all the past places and people that we've been with, and but we feel excited about where we are, and we've in each season we felt excited about the growth and about the newness. But it's tricky. You can I feel like you can it's easy to get frustrated, hurt, and just peace out on a season early. And then it's, you seem to be going around the same mountain over and over again instead of going over it or through it. So
you've just given us something to poke on right there, guys. We got I mean, I want to ask so many questions, and I told you this might happen. This is so
I know.
I do want to ask, like, how do we develop discernment to know,
oh man,
I'm leaving because I'm uncomfortable, or I'm leaving because actually this is close? Let me put a pin in that, but let me ask this first. You made a comment. You said regarding leaving and grieving, sometimes it's not done well. Pull the thread on that. What does it look like to do it poorly?
Yeah.
Like from an emotional maturity perspective.
Right. I think, this is in my unprofessional opinion. But
it's so good.
In just my life.
Your life. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think anything done out of hurt and not healing is probably not done well. And I was just talking about that the other day with someone. We were talking about writing songs. And I thought about, there's been a few songs that I can remember. I could go back to the moment I wrote them and sang them for the first time in front of people at my church. And there was one song I wrote out of like a place of hurt. It was even before I got married. It was a breakup that I had with a girlfriend. And I remember writing this worship song that I was trying to bring to my church, but it might as well have been like a country breakup song, and maybe it would have been a great one. But
yes,
but I remember going through that, and at the time I was talking with my buddy, my roommate at the time, who was one of the pastors there. He was like, I don't know if that one's a good one, dude. And so then a month or so goes by, and I've had time to process things and work with the Lord, and I remember writing another song, and it was great, and it was just. It went over great. And I remember talking with my friend, and he was like, dude, the difference is that first one was, you were just like, you were writing out of hurt. And this other one that really we felt the Lord on, and it was out of a place of healing. And I feel like that can apply to even the leaving and the going on to the next thing. Is like, why are you doing this? Why do you feel like you want to push this season away and move on to the next season? Is it because that season's over and it's time and the leaves are changing, or the leaves are falling, whatever? Or is it because something didn't go the way you wanted and you're hurt and or you don't want to deal with something that maybe a leader is, and maybe the Lord is allowing your leader to identify something in you that needs to grow and needs to change, and maybe you don't want to. And so you're just like, I want to move to the next thing. And that probably happens so much in not just ministry, but in life. But I think you have I mean, you have to ask the Lord, obviously. And my wife and I are constantly communicating about the seasons and anytime any massive moves or massive changes we've had, we've sat on it. We've tried not to rush, but also tried to wanted to know the window of the Lord's timing. And because there definitely is one. And I even like our move here to Tennessee from California. I remember in the summer of 2020, I started to feel like that prodding of, I think our season's coming to a close here in California. And it hurt because I loved being there. I loved my church. I loved Reading, and all my best friends were there, and most of them are still there. But I started to feel that, and it's funny. I don't usually my wife's the one that feels like the next season coming first, and then she kind of lets me know, here's what I'm feeling, and it takes me a while. And for this one, I felt it, but then I remember talking to her, and it was finally around the fall of 2020, like October, we both kind of felt like, okay, yeah, this is happening. This is what we're supposed to do. And for me, I was like, I feel like it's like, we're supposed to do this, but it's supposed to be like in the spring of next year, like maybe spring of 21. And my wife was like, babe, I just really feel like it's supposed to be first of the year. I don't know why, but I feel it very strong. And she's way more of the feeler, way more of the, she'll get a dream or something will happen, and the Lord really speaks to her in that way with as far as like direction and stuff. And but I remember we wrestled with that back and forth. I was like, that's too soon, babe. It's too soon. I felt like maybe we were going to leave too early. I was worried about it, but it ended up, things fell into place. That was the thing. We just stayed in connection with the Lord. We're like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what my wife's feeling, but also we want to make sure, God, that we're in your will. We're in the timing that you have for us. And I remember a house became available. Make a long story short, we ended up closing on a house in December here at the house I'm in, and we moved January 7th, 2021. And we even got, I'll say this, this is back in October when I was struggling with the idea of us moving too soon. We had a friend of ours who's like, really a spiritual parent to us and speaks in our life a lot. She's like, she had a dream, and she feels like, I do feel like you're supposed to move, and I feel like it is supposed to be soon. She's like, I feel like the Lord showed me it's supposed to be soon, like what my wife was feeling. And she's like, Josh, I feel like in 6 months time from now, you're going to know why it was so soon. And I was like, okay. And this is kind of crazy. This is a little bit freaky, but that happened in October. Things started falling into place. I was out here riding with some people here in Franklin. My wife sends me over this house that I'm in, and he's like, will you go look at this house while you're here? And I come look at it, and it was the first house that I had seen where I was like, I feel like this might be our house. And so we put an offer on it the next day. They canceled all their showings the next day and just accepted our offer. And we were like, this happened so quick. So that was December. January, we move in. It's kind of amazing. It was barely in our budget. Like we were blown away that we could even like get it. I'm like 3 or 4 months later, I'm sitting on my front porch and just by myself and just thinking like, like our neighborhood's amazing. Our kids love it. We're surrounded by great people and kids that my kids play with. And I was just thinking, I was like, Lord, thank you so much. I mean, your timing is amazing. And that was the first time I went back and I remembered, one of our mentors, like telling us, hey, in 6 months time, you're going to know why you moved so fast. And I thought about that. It was 6 months to almost the week. And I thought about that. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, the real estate here had just skyrocketed. We would have never been able to afford this house that we're in had we waited to when I wanted to be here. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, that's not even like some big spiritual thing. It's just like the Lord was like, here's the house I want you in. and you won't be able to afford it if you don't go now. And this is the timing. And because of that, everything worked out. And it's, yeah, that was a long answer to your question, but yeah, it's just amazing. It's amazing, the Lord's timing.
It's a case study on leaving, grieving, discerning the voice of the Lord, living from his voice. You made a comment earlier, basically that anything done out of hurt and a state of not being healed is probably not being done well. How do we know? Is there like a dashboard that we could look to discern I'm living, creating, working, entering into relationships, making decisions from, here's the picture, open wounds versus a scar?
Wow. Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I mean, gosh, let me think back to how I mean, I know for me, it's just I feel at peace in a lot of ways when I'm dealing with things, you know, the fruit of, usually the fruit of the conflict or the leaving or whatever it is, like, is going to be healthy. It's going to be good fruit when it comes out of healing. And when it's hurt, I can just feel like that peace, or that's not, or when it comes out of hurt, I'm saying I don't feel the peace in it, you know, or it feels, it just feels difficult, and the tension, and just, things aren't falling into place. And, and maybe sometimes it's hard to know that because you're blind to it a little bit. I mean, if you knew, you wouldn't be trying to leave hurtful, you know, in a state of hurt. But I think, it's another reason why we got to stay in tune with the Lord. We got to stay in step with him, and in a daily interaction with him that's got to come first.
That's good. Yeah, okay, so you laid the groundwork for really what I want to hone in on today. You're talking about being led by peace. A lot of times, we'll just kind of paint this quick picture, and then we'll come back around to it. A lot of times in life, we think, okay, I can finally experience peace when there's no conflict in my life. However, peace is not the absence. Rather, the
Right.
measurability of peace is not due to the absence of conflict in our lives. You want to paint a quick picture on what peace is as a commodity, and then I actually want to get into some of the story that brought us together here today. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I haven't dove into just like this topic and peace in general, and like being the Lord being the Prince of Peace until like right now, you know, and when what we'll talk about. But I was, because of that, I was reading about it the other day, and I love the idea. I read this devotional the other day, and they were talking about just what it meant to have the Lord as your Prince of Peace, and they described it as being like Christ our Savior is like Christ is our Savior given us by God, and there's an assurance that flows out of this relationship that we have with him. And once we are in Christ, the Prince of Peace, he shows us that he will bring peace to wherever he rules. And I never heard it said that way, in a sense of like Jesus he's our Prince of Peace, and it means wherever he rules and reigns, he just brings peace. Like that's where the peace is. And so it got me thinking, like, okay, wow, then that means that I want to daily just be with him and make sure that I am letting him rule and reign in every part of my life, because wherever he is in that, he'll bring that. It comes. And so, and that's, like what you're saying, it's not, I don't remember how you said it, but peace wasn't the absence of the absence of peace necessarily. It was a peace. It's securing the peace in our daily walk, in our daily chaos. In some ways, it's like he's coming and he is the Prince of Peace in those daily walks, in those daily chaotic times. If that makes sense at all.
It does. And the reason I asked that first is because I know this isn't just theoretical to you. I want to rewind or fast forward wherever this sits in the story. Your wife entered a significant battle with anxiety.
Yeah.
What happened, to the extent you're comfortable sharing?
What? No, we love we love being able to talk about this. And honestly, the beginning of this happened 5 years ago. When we were in Redding, California, 2019. I was I kind of things started to take off with me. I had a song take off, and then so I've got all these opportunities to travel and tour. And because we were living in California, it was just the travel was crazy because I was traveling and touring out of Nashville. Really, most of the thing everybody's here,
And folks
but
might
I'm
not
out.
know. I'll just interject this.
Yeah.
Folks don't know, if you've ever been to Redding, California, there's no easy way to get to Redding.
There's
There
no
is an
easy
airport,
way.
But right. So there's that
Yeah.
too.
You're gonna be at least 2 flights, most of the
Oh,
time 3 flights on your way
Absolutely.
there. And so but we were kind of jumping on momentum. We had talked about it. We're like, okay, let's do this. So it was an amazing year, and in a lot of ways for me, as far as like career and calling and all these things. But then me being gone a lot, it just kind of like things started to unravel that I think were probably on their way to unraveling in somewhat with my wife and just with her piece. And this just kind of like progressed it. And she started to have panic attacks and severe anxiety while I was gone. And then when I would be home too. But and it just out of nowhere, we didn't know what to do. And so that was a crazy year of that. And I remember through counseling, through the therapy and all this, and prayers and all the, and even medication, we came through that year. It was a crazy kind of like the best of times for me, worst of times for our family in a lot of ways. It's kind of weird. I look back and there were like a lot of monumental, amazing things that you would, put, plaques on your wall from your career about, but then also like just like a nightmare of a year for my wife and and because of that, us as a family too, in a lot of ways. And the Lord brought us through it. We, honestly, 2020 came and ended up being like a gift. If that sounds crazy to say in a lot of ways, because it was, such a crazy time with the pandemic stuff. But because of that, it shut travel down and all that. And I was forced to stay home. And it honestly, I think, saved our lives and saved our marriage. I mean, I was just home all year. And then because of that, coming out of that, we moved here to make travel easier. And jumping back into what I'm doing, we went more intentionally, just picky. I'm very choosy about where I go and how long and all this. And we kind of went through a season where she wasn't dealing with it as much, and it didn't hit as hard as it did in 2019. But then last year, actually the last 2 Januaries, for whatever reason in January, I don't it hit really hard again. And I remember last year in January, February time, she got hit with a lot of anxiety and depression and having these panic attacks. And so I came off the road. I stopped traveling and I was just home for a while. And in the middle of that, I kind of shut everything down, and I was and we were just going after like healing and just whatever we can do to help. And in the middle of that, I even stopped writing. That I was supposed to be working on an album that we were doing the end of the year. And I just kind of stopped writing for it to just be home all the time. I didn't want to leave the house. And there was one writing session though that I had scheduled, and I hated to cancel because I was writing with 2 other buddies of mine, and one of them lives here, is a really close friend, and the other guy lives in Australia, and he had flown in for the week. So I felt bad. I was like, I can't cancel this. I don't want to, he's come in from so far away. And my wife was like, I really feel like you're supposed to be there. So I went there, and I remember like just talking to the guys, and I was like, I can't hide. It's hard for me to hide my emotions. I'm just like wear it on my sleeve. And they knew that, I looked like I didn't want to be there. And I was like, can I just be honest with you guys and just talk? I got permission from my wife to talk about it. And I just told him everything we were dealing with. And one of the guys writing, who lives here in our town, he was like, dude, I've been hit with the same thing over the last month, and I don't know where it's from. It just out of nowhere. And So we took like an hour or so and just went in, talked together, prayed, just kind of like, so, sought the Lord. Just we weren't thinking about writing or anything. We were just like, let's be together. Like, this is obvious that the Lord has ordained this time together for us to just share and help each other. And so we did, and it was amazing. And I remember texting my wife about it. I was like, I think this is just even the reason I came here, like just to and then we were like, should we write a song about this? Should we go after like a song about the peace of God? And we talked about like I knew that I wanted to like write a song that talked about the Prince of Peace, and about the Lord being like, I know he's my savior, I know he's my helper, I've seen him as my friend, he's my defender, he's all these things. Right now in this moment, the one part of him that I just want the most is the Prince of Peace. And I even remember this old Rich Mullins song called Hold Me Jesus, where that song where I'm shaking like a leaf, you've been king of my glory, but won't you just be my Prince of Peace? Like, that's all I kept thinking. I was like, that's what I want. And the thing about that song is it's so vulnerable, it's so authentic, and just laying it all out there. And so that was what I was like, the verses we have to write about. I don't want to, it can't be like this, sugar coated, like we're going to sing it on a Sunday morning. I don't care about that. I just need it to be honest. And so that's what we were. And I remember my wife even helping. I would text her. I'm like, there was one line in particular, where I can't remember the original line. It's something about in the second verse where like I was saying something like I've caused problems or something, and I text her about that, and she's like, "No, babe, I feel in that moment I feel like I'm being swallowed up by it. Like I don't know, like I feel like it's overtaking me." So I remember, okay, so I'm writing like, oh, I don't want to sing that because I wanted this. I was like, this song is for my wife, and I don't care if anybody else hears it, but I'm writing this song for my wife, and so we wrote that song. It felt so special to that moment. And I honestly left that moment thinking, I went there to write this song for my wife and for my friend who was there that day. And that's probably it. Cause I knew that later on, I knew I was doing a live album, and it was going to be, a live album that was full of worship songs for the church. And I didn't know that this really fit that mold, but I was like, this is just for my wife. And, fast forward that song is just, we would play it in the home every day. My wife would listen to it every day, and it was just like the little demo version of it, makes just my voice and a piano really. And just, months progressed, and we got a lot of heat. She got a lot of heat, a lot of breakthrough. She actually got involved in, some friends of ours, some ladies had a prayer group every Tuesday night, and she got locked in with that and just had some major healing and just some other, we could have a whole other podcast just talking about all that. But, and then, we get to the fall, and I really started to feel strongly like this song was special, not just for us, but because of what we're going through. Like, the more I would talk to people about it, the more people were like, I need that song. People would come forth like, well, I'm dealing with this too. And it's just people getting permission to actually talk about what they're dealing with, as it was, with anxiety and depression. And so I was like, I feel like, I know this is a live recording and it's going to be mostly worship songs, but I feel like we're supposed to do this. And I asked my wife, I was like, would you be comfortable talking about things in the middle of it? And let's maybe go after this. And so she did. And that night it was so special. We recorded that song. It's a live moment. And then my wife comes up, talks about her testimony, and we just like prayed for people and went after, cut the whole, like in the middle of the whole worship recording, we just had like ministry time towards this. And it was amazing. And I feel like out of all the songs, like, this song has been the song that's like reached people the most in a lot of ways, because it's shed a light on stuff I think that people didn't know that they had permission to maybe, talk about, and especially talk about in church and in what we do. But
Yeah, I want to get under the hood of this. This is so good.
Yeah.
And again, to the extent you want, talk to folks listening today. Inevitably, there are couples listening. There are people who are married, dating, engaged. Your role as a husband in this.
Yeah.
Talk about how anxiety affected the marriage. Again, to the extent you want, what happened in the dynamic, and what would you want to say to folks regarding navigating through this with hope as an anchor to your soul?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. That's so good. I mean, I know for me, for years with it, I think I felt like I was maybe the cause of it. I felt like me being gone was probably the cause of it. I mean, just initially, and some of that's just me. Maybe it's selfish, even that you just kind of look back at yourself, like, what did I do? Or like, am I at fault? And I do. I even just going through marriage counseling over the years, I've found that that's a lot of the things that the way I react to something with my wife is like, is this my fault or this isn't my fault? That kind of, I want to find who's at fault for this. And so I think for years I wore that as like oh man, it's my fault, and what I do is the cause of this. And then it started to creep in, well, I thought I was called to be doing what I'm doing. And then like, Lord, well, what do you get? Lord, give me another job, show me what's next, or what else I can do to not be gone. So all the things that those are all the things that came. And then just as a man, as a husband, like I just naturally want to fix things. I want to like, oh, if that's wrong, then let's stop doing that. And then this will fix that. And which is very much like, a man way to act and be, and it's just like where we're programmed anyway. But I had to realize like it's not necessarily, there is like, I am home more, and there are things like that like we are more intentional about, like when I'm gone and how much I'm gone, but that wasn't the cause of it, or that wasn't, it was a thing that helped, it just kind of boiled over because of some of that. But I think I've had to realize like a lot of the ways I can help is just to be there and be here for her and not feel like I have to fix things, because I don't always know the answer. Most of the times I don't know the answer, other than just to be with her and to pray and to talk if she wants to talk, to hear her out, and to just understand as well as I can what she's feeling and how she's feeling, and to a lot of the times to understand that she's not feeling that way because something's necessarily happened to make her feel that way. It's just, that's what's happening. She just and which for me, I'm so reactive. Like if I'm depressed, this is why, or if I'm feeling this way, this is why. And that's not the case 90% of the time with how she's feeling. Is just, she doesn't know why. And that's the crazy thing. And that feels crazy to me. It does feel crazy to her, but she's kind of like, she's used to that. But for me, I'm like, well, you need to do this then. Or maybe it's because you haven't been doing this, or have you been reading the Bible? Have you been spending time? All these things. And I realized like, I've got to pull back and just be like, I'm so sorry, babe. I love you. I'm here. I will talk if you want to talk. I'll leave you alone if you want me to leave you alone. I'll take the kids and we'll go do something, or we'll all be together as a family, which is usually what she wants. She wants, let's all be together, or let's go on a walk and yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest things, is just to try to find out that lane of where I can get in and be a help by sometimes not trying to help is how I'm a help.
That's it.
And just be available.
It's amazing you're sharing all of this, and I'm taking notes as you're talking, because I've got this mental picture now of three emotional experiences that I think can collapse, and folks lean into this, collapse our potential to move forward through pain, but also attune to one another, even our closest relationships in their times of pain. Yeah. So I think about the words fear, guilt, and shame. Let me paint this. So fear says, I'm totally out of control. I feel paralyzed because I don't even know how to affect change.
Yeah.
Guilt comes into play, like you were sharing with your wife. maybe I caused this in her.
Right.
Which creates a reaction in and of itself. And then the shame enters, like when you were sharing the story about going to the recording studio and the guy had flown in from Australia. Shame says, stay hidden, don't share. I'm here to write. This guy flew in from Australia. So
Right.
when the dynamics of fear and guilt and shame sink their tentacles into the heart, potential's collapsed, hope is deflated.
Yeah.
And what else, Josh? I'm just trying to paint a picture for folks because you're giving us a real-time case study. And in a way, like the anxiety is the alarm.
Yeah.
Underneath the alarm, there's a fire. There's smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've got to get to that. Anything else you'd want to say about this? And does any of that resonate with you in a way?
Oh, totally. It does. Because, especially because for me, the thing I've dealt with the most in my life that I've had to get through is shame. That's like the number one thing.
Will you share? How so?
Well, I don't even really know in a lot of ways. I know that sounds great, but I do know my parents divorced when I was a teenager, and in the moment, I knew it wasn't my fault. I had nothing to do with me, and I think I went through my whole, a lot of my 20s feeling that, I know, I was there. I know what happened. It had nothing to do with me. But I didn't realize how much of that was probably there. Maybe I on the outside I'm saying the right things, and I know if I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I can logically go back to all the things that caused this, and I'm not in there. But there was something inside that definitely was like you could have done something different, or you could have helped, or you could have this or that. And so there's definitely some shame, or a lot of shame that was from that. And I know that's creeped into my wife and our marriage, because just like I said earlier, I'm always like, okay, if something's wrong, well, is it my fault? Because I start feeling shame for it. I start feeling the guilt that you were talking about. So I'm trying to find a way out of that to well, it might be like this, but it's not my fault that it's like this. So I want to push away any guilt or shame that I might be pulling in, and instead of just, let's get at the heart of this and try to figure out what's going on and try to move forward. But it's so crazy how, well, especially, in a marriage, in a relationship period, you each come in with your own stuff that's probably a lot different in a lot of ways. And then you come together, and it works each other's stuff to the top. And I think that's a lot of ways. I don't deal with what my wife deals with, but because of that, it does push all my things that I do deal with. It does push those to the top, and then I have to deal with those too. So it's we're each on the other side handling our things and trying to bring them to the Lord and grow and get healthy. And yeah, that's what it's all about. My wife's amazing at that too. She's, I've never met a person who loves and wants to grow more than her. I hate growth in a lot of ways. It goes back to a lot of times I just don't, I think I'd like to be comfortable, like we were talking about, and growing, discipline, all of that, it makes you uncomfortable. And that's and that's how you grow in a lot of ways. But she's taught me so much in that, is that she loves reading. She loves moving forward. She hates the idea of I'm going backwards or I'm standing still, in a lot of ways. And
that's fascinating, because
it's so good
with profound experiences of anxiety, you'd think temperament would adapt to say, I don't want any change. Because we have an innate desire to eliminate the anxiety itself, we're going to say, I'm going to feign control of life or whatever,
Right. I mean, there definitely is that. There's definitely especially if it's hitting a little harder, there is okay, I can feel the let me grab control of things and feel that comes out a little more. But overall, yeah, she is always the one growing and wanting to, reading this or listening to that, or with our kids too, the same, teaching our kids, and I feel so, I mean, I'm not naturally built that way, but she has, I've learned that from her, and it's been so helpful in my own life, and even what I do, and growing and growing in my writing, growing in my walk. And, yeah, it's been so good.
It's really amazing. We don't have to go here if you don't want to at all, but it's amazing.
Okay.
You had mentioned early in life experiences of shame through your parents' divorce. I have this same experience. And what I've found is, and folks, I pray this adds value to you. If you're stuck in this position of saying, I can't get under the hood to discern really what is this inciting incident, event that is causing me this pervading sense of pain, I'd like to suggest, Josh, that early in life events, moments of shame, affect us profoundly when undealt with, because when we receive them early in life, we lack the emotional maturity to properly interpret the events.
Totally.
And then when we lack the maturity to properly interpret those events, the subconscious records a narrative that says, adjust, relate to life in a reactive way going forward. Does that resonate with you? It sure does me. And I'm like, man, I've had that with the Lord and in inner healing and counseling go, wait a minute. That is not just a destructive thought. That is a stronghold, to use Paul's language. That is a mindset that I need to actually allow the Holy Spirit to illuminate and bring healing to. Like, how does that, how has that played out for you?
Oh, I mean, I think we've talked about it. I've said it a lot. I think even like my nature now of like what I talked about, the just loving comfort, and just, I think a lot of that probably came out of those seasons where, especially because of my parents' marriage, ending all happened when I was in high school. I was like sophomore, junior, senior in high school. And, so I'm old enough to know, to be aware, but also old enough to know that something felt this is very uncomfortable. My dad's a pastor too. My dad was a pastor of the biggest church in our little county in North Carolina. And so it was also like this whole scandal because things were uncomfortable. Things were icky. And I go back and think about, oh yeah, well that is probably why like the rest of my life, I'm like, well, I will make sure that at all times, even if there's chaos around me, that I am okay, that I'm comfortable. I'm going to stay just back far enough to where I don't get hit with the shrapnel of what's going on. And
self-protection, Josh.
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until just honestly getting married and marrying someone like my wife who had her own stuff, that she grew up with. And she's gone through a lot more inner healing and counseling and all that than I had in my past. And then being with her and getting, a light shown on, that's marriage, being a parent. It just shines a light on everything. It just I didn't realize how selfish I was. Oh, I didn't realize and so, yeah, it's shown a light on a lot of that. And I think I've been able to, I still tons of growth needed, but I do think in a way I've been able to, turn a lot of that around into, helping people feel comfortable around me. You know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense. Like, even as a leader, as a worship leader, it's the great side of that part of that I've dealt with was I do feel like I have this ability to not just make the team that I'm working with feel comfortable, but even as a leader, as a guy who's getting up and leading people in song and worship to help them feel comfortable in a way that like, okay, I know where we're going. I've been here before. I've been here with the Lord before. So let me lead, and I'll lead us to a place where I've been, and I want you to feel safe and comfortable, and that you can be yourself and worship and all that. So I know that there's like an awesome side of that, but then, yeah, just like you said, the Lord it's been very revealing, like just in the past hurts and trauma, how you naturally start coping and dealing with that. And
I want to talk about mystery a little bit, because we serve a God of breakthrough. He is eternally good.
Yeah.
He is healer. And yet, like in my story, I didn't get breakthrough in many cases. I got walkthrough.
Yeah.
And the walkthrough created muscles of enduring faith. And all of that is hedged upon, I believe, the fact that he doesn't just do good. He is good. Obviously, there's a bunch that we don't understand. And I think embracing mystery is a huge key to navigating disappointment in life. I want to ask, though, because we've established the fact he is not the author of confusion. He's not the author of sickness and disease, any of that. And yet, I found in my own story, I received aspects of the nature of the Lord that I would have never discovered in any other season of life, except for in that deep valley. This is a dichotomy. What did you discover and receive from the Lord in that season that, Josh, you hadn't received up until that point, that really has shaped you today, even as you serve others?
Yeah. I mean, in the season that I walked through, or in the season walking through with my wife, or
I'd say both and, because you're husband and wife. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we hit on the Prince of Peace part. I definitely think we have walked through that and realized like what that means, what it means to walk with the Prince of Peace. And we talked about it, but I think also, I think just like the Lord as the shepherd, like the guide, I've felt very taken care of in a lot of ways. Like, especially even earlier, we were talking about the moves and the transitions and the life and we've had. I feel like when I look back all the way through it, he's been. I feel like I can look back, and if I see a picture of me in my teens with everything happening with my family, a picture of me in the last 5 or 6 years in our family's life, it's like I almost can see like that shepherd's rod, that crook, like around me, like pulling me here and there. And I love that visual. I love that that I do, like I feel I feel like I definitely feel the Holy Spirit that he's led us, and we've stepped out, but also we've been like led by the Good Shepherd, and that makes sense. And I've just always felt I felt his like faithful hand throughout my whole life. I just, when I look back at, I feel like I write songs about it all the time and unintentionally.
I think you actually just quoted one of your lyrics right there.
I think I did. I did. I honestly, as I said that, I was like, that's the first line of my song Evidence.
Yeah.
But I look back at that, and it's been so true. Like, he's just been so faithful, and there's been words spoken over me that you're going to do this, or you're going to do like great, prophetic things and great things. And I remember in the process of those being spoken, like how or what, how's this going to work, or how's this going to happen? And then years go by and none of that happens. And I'm like, Lord, what in the world? What was all that? And then to see him just with me every step, and how faithful he's been, and how it's also all been in his timing. I think that's what I feel like the Good Shepherd side of him is the side that I've seen and felt. Not just I think it's just been revealed to me in the last couple years, dealing everything. But I love the fact that you can see that, and then you can look back and be like, oh, you were always here. You were always that. I just didn't know that's who you were. I didn't know that was what was keeping me out of this and keeping me out of that, or pushing me into this and pushing me into that,
Okay, so for, I don't know, probably almost 20 years now, I've heard Bill talk about 4 weapons that we have in these places of fear and anxiety and hopelessness. The blood of Jesus, the name of Jesus, the word, and worship. I want to just ask you, as a worship leader, how has worship affected your relationship to anxiety? And I'm not specifically talking about worship music, but it definitely includes that. And I'll just say this before I turn you loose. Your song, You Deserve It All,
oh wow,
carried me through the entire pandemic and some scary health stuff of my own.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I right before we got on here today, I was like, I gotta just listen to that old version of that song. And dude, yeah, like worship, it just refocuses, and I'd love to know how it in and of itself has affected you and your relationship with everything we've been talking about today.
Well, first of all, that's amazing. That's probably, I was writing a song yesterday, and the guy I was writing with, I'd never met him until that day. But that was just, he was like, he was like, could you just tell me the story about how you wrote You Deserve It All? So I literally was talking about that. Yes. That's probably my favorite like worship song that I've ever been a part of. But, which funny enough, talking about Bill, when his wife Benny passed away a couple years ago, I was in town and I was leading worship that Sunday, and 3 days later, he still wanted to speak, and he reached out and he was like, yeah, it was one of the most unbelievable day of my life. I mean, one of the top, I was literally like, am I here? Am I a part of this right now? And it was unbelievable. But going back to that song, he was like, I want you to lead You Deserve It All, because it has a line in the bridge where it says, through every loss and victory, my soul will rise to only bring you glory. And he wanted to sing that morning after the loss of his wife. And I remember I couldn't even look at him when I was singing that line that morning, but yeah. So sorry, I took us off track a little bit.
No, dude, it's so good.
I think when even thinking about that song, I think that's one of the things I love about worship is it gets my mind off of myself. Like it forces me to just look straight to the Father and just like, okay, I want this moment to be all about you, and just focus on you. And and a lot of what I do is in the music part of that, but I think it's not just that. It's in every part of my life. I want to get my eyes off myself and just worship the Lord and let my life be just a reflection of who he is and who he's called me to be. And I think the more I do that, the more I'm walking with him, I'm worshiping him, it does get my mind off myself, and I am focusing on him. And just, yeah, it is. It's like what's that old song? And the things of this world grow strangely dim in the light of his glory. It's like, when I'm looking at him and I'm focused on him, the things of this world, the things that I'm going through, feel so small and so minute in a lot of ways compared to who he is and all, who he has been, not just who he is, who he has been, which we were just talking about. So yeah, I mean, that's what worship has been to me and for me. And as I have kids that are a 12-year-old girl and a 11-year-old boy, and my son even recently has been battling like some fears, and I guess you would call it anxiety, but just some fears of just being scared of outcomes that might happen that aren't going to happen, that are nowhere near, but he's just got fears of it. And so we've dove in and kind of gone after that with him, and shown him how to have the tools to deal with that. And that has been, I just think when you have things like that happen, you start a lot of other things that have gone on in my life and just things that I've learned with the Lord starting to make even more sense. We're like, oh, this is why you said what you said, is because I need to help him, to show him how to deal with this and show him where to go. And so I'll hear him, he's got a little Alexa in his room, and I'll hear him telling Alexa to put on worship music here and there, whatever song. And I can tell whatever song he's putting on is because of maybe something he's dealing with or how he's feeling. And we've been getting in the Word every night the last 2 weeks, me and him, and just reading about how to deal with worry and dealing with anxiety. And so, and even my wife's talked about she's been able to talk to him about things that she's dealt with but yeah, I want my home to all center around worship. I want the daily flow of my home to be centered around that. And man, and I think even going back to that day with that Sunday with Bill, he models that so amazing, and has in our lives for, gosh, the last 10 plus years we've been around him. So that was an unbelievable morning.
I'll never forget. So my first trip out there, I told you, dude, this conversation, it is organically evolving.
I love it.
And I love it, yeah. So my first time out there ever was early 2011, and I ended up sitting next to Bill's mom. Didn't even know Grandma Johnson and the whole thing.
Yeah.
We ended up staying in touch over the years and all that. And the last time, I was at her house last in 2016, so it's been quite a few years and all that. But
Yeah.
3 days after my mom passed, it'll be 12 years in November, I remember messaging her on Facebook at the time, and she just said, I'll never forget, she said, honey, listen to Bill's message about enduring faith. And Bill, like he did after Benny passed, Bill preached the weekend after his dad passed as well.
Right, yeah.
And that message, man, marked me so much. And I don't understand why things happen in life. I just think it is important to, not just important, necessary to embrace mystery.
Yeah.
Lord, you're good. I've set my face like a flint. I don't understand. I'm going to grieve well and thoroughly. I am going to have questions. You know, all that.
Yeah. No.
So and the value of worship just plays a key in all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, I won't say it like he said it because he says things so amazing. But I remember him talking about that, like the understanding. Like, yeah, I don't understand it, but grabbing onto the peace of God does, gives me the right to not have to understand it. It's just his peace passes all that. And when it gets, we've said it, it's, it's in the Bible. We've said, I've said the peace that passes understanding so many times, but when you actually have to apply it to something that you don't understand, you don't know the answer to, but the only answer is to grab on to the Prince of Peace and let it like take over and allow you to not have that. That's when it hits. That's when it's like, oh, this is what you're talking about. This is what you were talking about.
We'll center back on your song, Prince of Peace, because I want to sort of pull the thread on this as we get ready to land this conversation here today. But do you think, Josh, our expectations for what peace is keep us from really experiencing it? In other words, our misdirected expectations for how peace is going to show up in our lives prevent us, hinder us, keep us from really experiencing him whose name is the Prince of Peace in the midst of all of our chaos. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think it goes back to some of what you were saying. Like maybe we think peace is like the absence of, chaos and conflict and all that. And maybe peace is just Jesus. It's just the presence of Jesus in our lives. And the fact that like we still might have to walk. I mean, he said there's going to be trials. There's going to be things we walk through, but maybe the peace is walking through those, knowing he's with us, knowing he's right here with us. And wherever, like we said, wherever he is, wherever he rules, wherever he has the freedom, has been given the place to reign, that's where his peace is. And
wow. Where he's given the place to reign. Will you knock on that door real fast? Because
oh gosh,
I mean, where we voluntarily say, reign and rule in my heart. I think about like Colossians 3:15 says, let the peace of Christ rule, act as an umpire continually in our hearts, deciding with all finality all questions that arise in your mind. And I'm like, this is voluntary. Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Isn't that, maybe it goes, I know it's so crazy. It goes back to like, how he, from the very beginning, he was like, okay, you can, it's up to you. I'll let you decide. And so and I think there's so many times I feel like, well, I have minutes. You can have it all, Lord. And then you find a little place where, well, you're still keeping that from me. Like there's this little part of your heart or your life or what your situation that you haven't given me full reign in. And so maybe that's why you're not feeling peace in that area. And I think, going back to the last few years and what's going on in our lives and our family, like we've had things like pull back on little areas that maybe we weren't giving completely to the Lord. And man, I think it is so crazy to look at that and see like also what a loving Father he is, that he loves us so much too, that he wants us to be able to make the choice to have him rule and reign. He's not a father that's just like, no, you will do it. I will be in your life. Like I will have, he's like, no, it's you. I'm giving you the ability to make the choice. Yeah.
Another Bill-ism. Like he's looking for worshipers, right?
He's looking for worshipers. Yeah. That's what, Are you going to like worship him with your whole life? Or just the comfy parts? Just the, I want his peace in my trials and all that, but I also want his peace in my relationships and in my growth, in my maturing process, in the victories and in the losses. I want to give him all of that and have him reign and rule in all of it. So
you guys, I'm going to put a link, you've probably heard You Deserve It All, but I'm going to put a YouTube link in the show notes at wingtoday.tv, because like through every loss and victory, Josh, that line got me through 2020 and 2021. And I don't say that in an aggrandized way. I mean, that is the truth, and I'm thankful for it. Yeah, I really am.
Thank you. That's amazing. That's so encouraging. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, your new song, Prince of Peace, is out, guys. In the show notes, I'll put links to, the Spotify, the Apple Music, all the things, YouTube. We'll put a link to that. We'll embed a video there. But, Josh, anything else? I've just really appreciated this conversation today. Just a real-time zoom in on the issues of the heart and being able to unpack them in a way that is productive and invites the Holy Spirit to just kind of shape the affections of our hearts. So anything else today?
Thank you. Oh, gosh. I mean, I've enjoyed this so much. And
thanks, Josh.
I've shared so much about stuff that I don't think I've talked about in years. This has been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. I think even just, even the things that that you've gone through in your life, but I don't talk about my family stuff that much, not because I don't want to, but you just don't
get it.
You don't go there. And so
I get it.
It's been so helpful for me. I think, as far as anything else, I just want to encourage people, I guess, who might be going through what our family's gone through. And I can say on my side of like being the one who's not necessarily going through the anxiety and the lack of peace, but being the spouse of that and not knowing, but just to encourage those who are on that side too, to just lean in to their spouse and be whatever they feel like they need the most, and not to feel like they have to fix things, but just to just know that they just need to be there and they need to like go after the Lord together, and just encourage them in that. But man, it's a crazy time that we're living, and it's, I feel like if we could just put down our phones for a little bit, there'd be a lot of the things that would be, resolved. But we have so many things coming from the outside to tell us who we're supposed to be or who we aren't yet or who will never be, all this. And I think a lot of it needs to come back to, we need to find our identity and who we are in the Lord. And just the more we get to know the Father, the more he reveals who we are. And, I've been leaning in and thinking of a lot of that lately. Not just with what's going on in my life, my wife and I, but just like we were saying earlier with the kids and parenting. And as my kids get into their teenage years, which is scary. Oh my gosh. Oh, but
piece upon piece, right? For every
yes,
season.
Yes. Seriously.
Wild.
Yeah. We'll come back and maybe I'll write another song later that has to do with just,
I love it.
This, the peace of God reigning in teenagers' lives.
Oh my gosh. So good. Oh, Josh. Well, listen. Tell folks where to connect with you. Obviously, all the music platforms. But where are you hanging out today?
Gosh,
give people
I mean,
an on ramp.
The best place probably is, now that I've talked about social media and all that, it probably is Instagram. If you're on Instagram,
Cool.
that's probably the place I'm the most consistent with sharing on. But then there's joshbaldwin.com. There's a website, but yeah. And then wherever you listen to music and YouTube and all of that, but we're there. Yeah.
So good. Josh, thanks so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Today.
This has been very life-giving, and so
I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's been so encouraging.